So there I was, minding my own business. I was living in a boatyard in St Martin, French side, in the Caribbean, the Toby Sale yard. Um, a small yard for normal people who do their own things. A really nice social place to base yourself in the longer term. And also has, being French, it has not quite French prices, but a bit less insanely expensive. Before that, I'd been based a mixture of Falmouth area or northwest Spain, Vivero, near La Coruna. So I'd moved my base to St Martin. And at that time, I'd been sailing for really a long time by then. It's not the only thing I did, because I also did other jobs and other adventures, and other little pieces of life came along. And really quite a few years spent doing commercial marine work, pilot launch skipper, barge skipper. But I was feeling I'd done a lot of that by now, and it does take a toll on you, particularly if you take a certain attitude that I do. Of I'm not taking people and boats to sea on journeys as a holiday. It's not recreational so far as I'm concerned. I'm at work, and that's that. And what had also occurred at that period of time is the company that I was most normally working my contracts for, 4 times out of 5, perhaps, a certain company, quite a large company, but the proprietor of that had unfortunately been struck down with a brain degenerative, I believe genetic thing. I'm not sure about the details, but he was completely out of the, he fell out of the picture. So I haven't got some money together. And being the owner of a fairly decent but rather small general purpose offshore boat, a Seacracker 33, I would call it. So the first thought in my mind is that I'd return to England, base myself more permanently, because also there's things like, mummy, daddy, not spring chickens, and nephews, and all this sort of thing. So I thought I'd do that, but just before I do that, settle down, not spend my life wandering around in the oceans, or at least quite a lot less. There just seemed to be enough time to have an attempt to sail around the world, non-stop in that boat. So I surveyed my own vessel, and then working in the yard in St Martin with a lot of help from the extremely helpful local boatyard company, who really, couldn't have helped me more, basically. There was so much. So a lot of major things were sorted in preparation, and what could be found in terms of equipment, more sails, storm sails, plenty of those. So to check things out, I took her back to the UK, if I'm right, and that was probably in sort of early March or something like that. So not the depths of the storm, but I'd gone out to find some chop and see how she went, which was absolutely fine, basically. So the boat totally fine, but I obviously had a lot of time to think about what further operation. So my plan at a certain time of year in the summer, I wanted to leave in order to reach the south of South Africa and the southern seas when the summer is starting there, not the middle of the winter, obviously. So that voyage went well. It was really quite easy. The weather was pretty varied, and more than enough decent conditions to test my current arrangements out. Yes, you get into a routine. It's all quite automatic. Now, I had twin Hancon head sails, inline stays, so I didn't have, at that time, roller furling, having been quite a budget thing. And also, it's not really my... it's just not me as well, basically. I like to suffer and get out there and fight my sails for the night. That's what it's all about. So I made the trip there, and that was fine. It was pretty fast as well. The only issue that I had during it, a period of a couple of weeks towards the end, I suffered quite a lot of left eye, single eye blackouts, mainly in the morning, standing up and those sorts of things. I had like a spell of those. I've no idea whether it's relevant to anything whatsoever, but it is an event that occurred. So arriving in Falmouth, I had some work for a couple of months to get some money together and buy time for preparations. Obviously, a lot of tins to be prepared. If it comes from Lidl's, I've got it, basically. I had it on bulk. A lot of peanut butter, of course. But you're stocking up cheaply. If you're not too fussy, it's really quite easy. And the boat had enough capacity to not have to go too lightweight and everything. That boat had a water tank in the keel. I used that kind of full all the time as a reserve. I never actually used the contents of it. I had 6 weeks water reserve inside the keel, and obviously that was useful for ballast and stability as well. So in this time, the major changes that I made were to add roller reefing for the outer foil, and I had to sail for that and a spare sail, yet another second-hand spare main, and quite a large number of quite a large addition to my stock of storm head sails, because I knew I was going to be needing those. So, and the final large alter was for the windows and the cockpit also. When I set off, I had windows. Later on in the Southern Atlantic, as I moved towards Cape of Good Hope, I had bolt-on and seal-on fiberglass covers for the actual windows. So in fact, there were no windows at all. And also the foredeck hatch had a reinforcement cover to it, so it's really quite ruggedly designed at that time. On the pictures of the boat, you'll see in the hatch area the cupola for storm type conditions. The actual cockpit area was partially filled with an insert that was inside, so you didn't see it. So that reduces greatly the water volume capacity of the cockpit. If you're flooded, you want the amount of water to be kept on board rather than shed immediately to be at a minimum. And also every possible spare that could possibly be found, stolen or created, insofar as you can when you don't have an unlimited endless supply of money. But I was pretty well set up, basically. A lot of basic things were obviously part of this setup. There was simply one place where I ever sat that had a boat cage around it. It was my eating table. Behind me was the quarter berth for my legs, so it was also where I slept. My navigation, my information, and I could reach the castle, the most important thing, without moving. So that was all set up nicely. And forward of sort of mid ships, I never really went up there unless it was to get some supplies, because I made it so that there was no reason to be there, as it were. It's better to minimize your operation area. So it's just for a very small area. I have various angles and weather conditions to place myself. One of the things that I'm not so weakness but issue to account for was the hatchway itself is fairly large, so the lower two were fixed in not permanently, but twice over, as it were. They both bolted in place, but then they also tied down as well. This was quite useful when the boat was rolled upside down, because there's nothing worse than losing your hatch boards and then rolling up again, because then you find your boat very full of water very, very quickly. So it's always an essential thing. You can't count on the sliding hatch to hold your boards in. That's not the way to do it. It's the same as nothing, basically. So yes, after all the preparations were made, I found myself feeling rather ready, in a sort of. I provided a vast amount of entertainment to keep me going. You guys were looking at nature and fishing again. No, but I'm really lazy about fishing, really, because the thing about fishing is it's nice for a change, but it's like every time you eat a fish, it's some food that you bought and took with you, decided not to eat. I prefer curry, personally. So why did I set off? At that time, I guess, it was a time of opportunity. I planned on change, and this was the opportunity. I thought if I was ever going to do it, I was going to do it this time, or I wasn't going to do it. And I suppose as a specific thing, as a mission, after the sort of, you know, though I'm sort of pretty fit, my respiratory as a long-term heavy smoker and reprobate, so obviously does have its toll. So it's reasonable to say that the physical work was only going to get more difficult. It certainly wasn't going to get easier over the years. That particular undertaking, it was like a grand trip where the amount of time involved and the situation and the mission was suitable to be realistic to achieve. I've always wanted to walk all the way around the world on foot, but it'd take about 3 years. And for me to stay on one direction or purpose for so long is actually fairly unlikely. I'd have walked across one continent and got absolutely hopefully distracted and done something completely different. It's for certain, isn't it, now? So it was the realistic thing. I just had enough money. I could have done with more, but we can all need more, as it were. A few compromises had to be made, but not too bad. To keep myself entertained, I had a vast selection on. I got two old, this is my current iPads and electronic devices. I got two extra spare ones on the eBay. So I had good depth in case I flooded something or whatever, because obviously having no books would have been a nightmare. Yes, so with 1,000 books to read and 2,000 good-looking games on my iPad to keep me amused, away I set.